What is Yu-Gi-Oh? Let's talk about it. Wait. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't, because that helps me upload more videos and know that you like content like this. When I started my Duel Sauce Yu-Gi-Oh! History series, I assumed that everyone watching it knew what the game was. But the fact is that it wasn't the case. There are always new people coming in and checking out my historical analytical series about the meta and evolution of a children's card game. Because who doesn't like that kind of stuff? The legacy and nostalgia of Yu-Gi-Oh! Cannot be denied, and not just for it being a product. Many of you may already be aware of the history, but I'd still like to lay it out for everyone, fans or not, just to appreciate it all, and maybe you'll learn a thing or two by the end. So in this entry in Yu-Gi-Oh! History, I'll be pulling back the curtain of sets, formats, and meta-defining cards, and explain to those interested and curious just what Yu-Gi-Oh! Is and why it's so important to literally trillions of people. Let's enter the draw phase and jump right into it. It's time to Yu-Gi-Oh! Started as a manga by mangaka Kazuki Takahashi in Shonen Jump magazine. It was serialized weekly from September 1996 through March 2004. Takahashi was born in 1961, but began his manga artist career in 1982, eventually debuting with Tokyo no Suma, published in 1990. But success eluded him until Yu-Gi-Oh!, so it most certainly wasn't a quick breakout victory dragon story. He is a big fan of games of all sorts, which blend into the uniqueness of Yu-Gi-Oh! As well as being inspired by other mangaka like Katsuhiro Otomo and Hirohiko Araki, who made Akira and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure respectively. You can definitely see this in Yu-Gi-Oh! With its stylistic approach, problem-solving dilemmas, and an Egyptian background much like JoJo Part 3, Stardust Crusaders, which ran from 1989 to 1992. Yu-Gi-Oh! In itself translates to King of Games, which is a very literal description of the crux of the series, that being games of all sort, not just a card game. The manga was about a young boy named Yugi who discovers a magical Egyptian artifact that houses a dark spirit within it. This spirit, called Dark Yugi or Yami, possesses Yugi in times of peril to take revenge on the bullies and evil men that festered Domino City. The theme of friendship is the primary driving force of the series, and Yugi starts to gain friends throughout his journey, understanding his Millennium Puzzle. During the original series, Yugi plays many games, shadow games against the evildoers, in which when they lose, they play a penalty game which usually causes the loser great harm in a magical way. This would be the weekly challenge that the readers would have to work through alongside Yugi, because it was never a one-sided game despite you knowing Yugi knows how it works better than anyone. These games got dark too, ranging from stabbing your hand to pick up money, or involving guns, or even a homicidal maniac. During these games, one in particular was introduced called Magic and Wizards, which was meant to parallel the popular card game Magic the Gathering. In the anime, this game would be changed to what we now know as Duel Monsters, the game that would eventually become the real card game I talked so much about, Yu-Gi-Oh! Although the game only showed up a couple times in the original manga, it wasn't until fans constantly asked Takahashi about it that the game eventually grew and turned into the second Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga series, at least in the USA, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duelist. Sure, there were other games in the manga that got their own spotlights, like Capsule Monsters and Dungeon Dice Monsters, but it was Magic and Wizards that captured fans' wonder and imagination for it combined shonen battle manga with a manifested game with rules and magical properties, perfect for pushing the series in that direction. In English translations, Yu-Gi-Oh! Was split between three series: Yu-Gi-Oh!, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duelist, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Millennium World. The original series is filled with Yugi playing a multitude of games against various villains of the week and other magical beings like Shadi and Bakura. Duelist starts where most people are aware of, the Duelist Kingdom arc. where the series takes a sharp turn into the Duel Monsters card game and through the following Battle City arc. Then the final arc is Millennium World, or more commonly referred to in the anime as Dawn of the Duel. It made sense why the anime started at Duelist, and that's because it's the most concise, marketable portion of the manga, plus it already has all the established characters you would want to see, like Yugi, Joey, Kaiba, and Bakura, much quicker and more abridged than the manga. See, Yugi's first duel with Kaiba in the anime was actually done much earlier in a grander way in the manga in its own arc, as well as them having an even earlier encounter. There was also an original anime by Toei that was based more off of the original series, albeit with their own changes too, dubbed Season 0 by fans. This anime would also get their own card game made by Bandai, which I've talked about in length already. When the modern anime came out in April 18, 2000 in Japan and September 19, 2001 in USA, it was called Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, shortened in the West, and was produced by Studio Gallop and Nihon Ad Systems, in which Konami got the rights to the card game. In the US, 4Kids got the right for distributing with their own aesthetic changes that we all know and love, as many anime did at the time, like One Piece and Shaman King. The trading card game in America would first be published in 2002 by Upper Deck, before being claimed back by Konami in 2008. The original official card game in Japan came out years earlier in 1999, and the wave of cards released by both the TCG and OCG would be very different for quite some time. The game at a face value is simple. Both players start with a set amount of life points and draw cards to start their opening hand. Each turn, the turn player will enter various phases in which they can summon monsters, activate spells and traps, and attack their opponent. Whoever reduces their life points to 0 first wins. Of course, like any trading card game, the rules are significantly more complicated than that. Yu-Gi-Oh! To the point of requiring a master's degree in linguistics. Don't even get me started on pendulum summoning. Despite that, it is a very fun game that can be played in many ways, ranging from simplistic beatdown to complicated combo decks or tempo controlling control decks, and it all revolves around fun card design, archetypes, and players outwitting and out-resourcing their opponent. I'm sure I'll tackle a how to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Series eventually, and if you want me to do that, let me know. Since the beginning, the card game has not stopped, ranging from world tournaments, dozens of booster packs, decks, and many more series like Yu-Gi-Oh! GX and Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. It doesn't look like Yu-Gi-Oh! Is stopping anytime soon, with always a new anime series, video games, mobile game apps, card games like Speed Duels and Rush Duels, and cards all around being released every year. The popularity that Kazuki Takahashi created back in 1996 still hasn't died down. And while it may not be as popular as Magic or Dragon Ball in terms of manga, the Impact found its own niche in the card game industry and left its own imprint in many people's minds, whether they played the card game or just enjoy the show or really just heard of it in general. I really do hope the original manga in its original entirety gets a faithful remake one of these days, because as I'm reading through it, I understand why people loved it so much back in the day and just how unique it is even compared to the anime. My first experience with Yu-Gi-Oh! Was one morning at my grandma's house, and I was watching Kids WB and saw that first episode where Yugi battles Kaiba and summons the unstoppable Exodia. That was also aired alongside the Mummy cartoon, just mentioning that for no particular reason other than my own memory. I remember first playing the game back in May of 2002, where my brother and I split the Kaiba starter deck and lost miserably to his Blue Eyes White Dragon. Eventually I would get the Yugi starter deck as my own and had plenty of fun for years to come. Since then, I've played the game throughout its original run and partway through the GX era before stopping right as 5Ds was announced, with card games on motorcycles and synchro monsters. It wasn't until the tail end of the Xyz era that I got back into the game and fell in love with it all over again. Mainly due to the Yugi Legendary decks that came with the 3 decks and the Red Dark Magician. Man, I love that set. More so since I discovered the old school community that has taken everything I loved as a kid and still keep that format alive in many ways. If you haven't played the game, consider picking a deck that interests you and playing with a friend sometime, or even checking out the original anime and watching through the first Duel's Kingdom arc. The animation is phenomenal, and it really is a fun way to watch a silly shonen card game with rules that only work in context of the manga and its magical roots. What were your first memories of Yu-Gi-Oh? I hope you learned something in this video, whether it was something major or minor. There's certainly a lot to unpack with Yu-Gi-Oh, from books, TV shows, video games, card games, and so much more. What started as a fun manga about friendships and games evolved into a worldwide phenomenon about an ancient Egyptian card game that hooked fans from the draw phase. And trust me when I say that there's still plenty of history to be shared, and I'm only getting started. So let's enter the end phase and continue to see where this magical series of Millennium Proportions take us.